the city of St. Louis, you're listening to the Don't Push Pause podcast with your hosts, Justin Johnson and Lindsay Reber.
Welcome again to the podcast.
Hello.
So, we got a lot of comments about Stand By Me. So Thank you everybody that commented. I think it was our most listened to podcast episode that we've done so far.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I can totally see that. I mean, it's a movie that a lot of people know, and I'm so glad we could do it and talk about it, and hopefully it made some of you rewatch it or discover it for the first time.
Well, today we are going to talk about
Shifting gears,
talk about Robocop. And this is one I've been kind of campaigning for us to do.
I know, so
I'm glad you agreed to do this, which I know you like the movie, but you said you hadn't seen it in a while.
I finally allowed you to do it. Yeah, that's
Thanks.
right. No.
Thanks for letting me, Lindsay.
No, you love this movie, and it gave me an opportunity to rewatch it, and I hadn't in a long time, but definitely remember it from my childhood.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one. I think it's a really provocative and relevant film for today.
And I had forgotten that. I think that it just had been lost on me, until now, and rewatching it was like, dang, there's a lot going on in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot more than maybe you would think by the, title.
Totally. So Robocop will be our main topic of discussion, and then, of course, we have our picks of the weeks. My pick of the week this episode is Strange Invaders, connected by way of Nancy Allen. And
I love Nancy Allen.
And it's kind of I don't know if it's one that many people have seen, but I'll get into that a little bit. And what was your pick of the week?
Mine is from 1984. It is Michael Crichton's Runaway with Tom Selleck.
Ooh, all right.
And connected by way of it just being a futuristic movie involving cops and technology, robot type things.
I would say that's a pretty good connection there.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's completely different vibe than Robocop, which is nice because there's so many things on the surface you could be like, that sounds like the same movie, kind of.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
And then of course we close out with our Murray moment, which that's my favorite part of the podcast.
It's fun.
Just get to chill out and listen to you tell me stories about Bill Murray.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Robocop. Why we picked Robocop, other than me badgering you about
there
doing
was
this
no
movie
badgering. There's no badgering.
So why we picked Robocop? A couple things. Again, I think these watching movies that portrayed the future, that are now movies from the past,
Yeah.
always interest me.
Yeah.
Watching them in present day, and this one I think actually holds up pretty well.
Yeah.
And it's also, again, this is one of these movies that I always has always stuck with me throughout my life. I've always come back to and can still enjoy it.
And I think in a newer generation, maybe you hadn't seen the original, but there was a remake of it not too long ago. I did not see that, but it still, was, even if you hadn't seen the movie initially in '87, just the title itself, you've heard of it or know that it's a movie. I don't think I'm the only one. But man, that title.
Yeah, we can say it. It's a bad title.
It's a bad title.
It's a bad title, but that's okay.
But I mean, he is a robot man cop.
Right.
And I mean, Robot Man Cop sounds way worse than Robocop.
Robot Man Cop would have been an even worse title.
That's really bad.
But now I always think of the movie as Robot Man Cop.
Yep, from now on. But I think it is a movie that during the time when it came out was certainly important and but it was part of the whole like 80s futuristic cyberpunk kind of thing that was going on during the 80s. So it is really important for that time and a super popular movie at the time.
So a few things to talk about with RoboCop. I kind of wanted to discuss. I think this is one of the has one of the best villains that I can think. Not one of the best, not the best, but Kirkwood Smith's portrayal of Clarence Boddicker.
Yeah, he sucks, but it works.
But there's also multiple villains. The Ronnie Cox, Dick Jones character. So I like this that we have like multiple villains. And it's reminiscent. This reminds me of just like Alan Rickman's villain in Die Hard.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like the movies. This is a movie where the villain is so charismatic, even though he's doing these horrible, horrible things. You're not rooting for him, but it does make for good entertainment. He makes for a good villain. It's a good clashing of like two characters, like good versus evil. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and then I think we were going to talk about just the way this movie was not prophetic, but there's a lot of things in it that I think for the time people weren't talking about, like privatizing government sanctions and like corporations like corporate takeover, and
this was also done like during the Reagan era and when capitalism was at its height.
Yeah, it was always like what you were, making money was like something that you like really had to. It was like that was the thing to do.
Yeah, we had capitalism and cocaine, and both of those things are very prevalent in RoboCop.
And we'll talk a little bit about the director, Paul Verhoeven. Verhoeven. Where are we going with Verhoeven?
I don't know. That's going to be what the podcast is debating on how the Dutch pronunciation is.
Because there's a lot, just listening to the director commentary on RoboCop, he's had a very, I think, interesting career. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We've, every now and then this happens in the podcast where you have these uncontrollable sounds that are going on. We have a very modest studio in the basement here, but I do have a dog named Mallory, and she does have allergies really bad.
She's working
occasionally
on it.
Yeah, so if you hear, trying my best to keep her from gnawing, scratching.
She's wearing pajamas right now.
Yeah, she's
medicated,
smelling like she's on Benadryl and smelling like apple cider vinegar, but that's what it smells like in the studio right now. So if you hear some scratching sounds, that's not us.
Yeah.
That is the dog.
Not generally, not this time anyway.
I need to keep her down here with us because I need to monitor her to make sure she doesn't scratch her ears real bad. So we may have to stop from time to time to make sure she's okay. Nothing for you to worry about, dear listener. She's very spoiled. So before we kick off our discussion, Lindsay, as always, will you tell us what is RoboCop about? What is the plot of this movie? This Robo-Man Cop movie.
Robo-Man Cop. All right, so it's set in a like kind of dystopian, crime-ridden Detroit. That's not really a far, cry from reality. With this cop that has been a cop that we meet, and within the first 25 minutes or so is mortally wounded, and as part of a project, he dies, and then is kind of reinvented as this cyborg man cop, Robo-Man Cop. But basically, he becomes RoboCop, and isn't supposed to have any of the memories of the actual man. But we start seeing that there are little things that start happening, and then the whole idea of, where is that line now?
Humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, a glitch.
Yeah, a glitch in the system.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into some of the other. This is a movie that seemingly comes off as a big action movie, which it delivers, I think.
Yeah.
But there's a
100%.
lot going. There's a lot going on in this movie beyond that and underneath. So we'll get into that. But before we start, we'll go into a clip from Robo-Man Cop, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
I'm so sorry I said that.
The enforcement droid, Series 209, is a self-sufficient law enforcement robot. 209 is currently programmed for urban pacification, but that is only the beginning. After a successful tour of duty in old Detroit, we can expect 209 to become the hot military product for the next decade. Dr. McNamara.
We'll need an arrest subject.
Mr. Kinney,
Yes, sir.
would you come up and give us a hand, please?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kinney is going to help us simulate a typical arrest and disarming procedure. Mr. Kinney, use your gun in a threatening manner. Point it at Ed 209.
Yes, sir.
Please put down your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply.
I think you'd better do what he says, Mr. Kinney.
You now have 15 seconds to comply. You are in direct violation of Penal Code 113, Section 9. You now have 5 seconds to comply. 4, 3, 2, 1. I am now authorized to use physical force.
So I guess to start off, maybe just talking about Paul Verhoeven as the director here. Very interesting career. It's kind of like had a mix of really doing a lot of science fiction films.
Robocop was his first American movie.
His first American movie, and then followed it up with Total Recall, which I think is an excellent
I love
sci-fi
Total Recall.
movie. Sci-fi movie. But then I'm a big fan of Starship Troopers. That's the one that doesn't seem like it gets a lot of love.
You know, every time that movie comes up, someone's like, you should play Starship Troopers. You should talk about Starship Troopers. And I think I've only seen it one time, and I understand why, but again, it's like there's commentary underneath the plot, and I think it was just this. It's the spider thing, right? It's big spiders.
Yeah, big bugs. I think like it hurt.
That just turned me off.
I think it's like it could have helped with better casting, but it was just one of those movies. But I've got a lot of love for that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's definitely a filmmaker who has had an interesting career, and just a filmmaker who definitely approaches movies. I think some of these films wouldn't. Essentially like Robocop 2, even though a lot of these undertones were in the script, I think like he has a way of fleshing things out. And again, his use of, and we'll talk about this in the podcast, like his use of violence in a lot of his movies. It's like it's purposeful, but then I also like question it at times too. So that's something like to talk about. But I do think that he is a very interesting director, and I think he's one where, as far as like science fiction films go, I mean, he's made 4 movies that, and even I'll consider Hollow Man. It's not, I don't think it's a great film, but I think that it's, for me, it's, again, it falls in that technology, future vibe of science fiction that I like versus spaceships and that, that going out in outer space.
I think Hollow Man 2, not Hollow Man 2, but Hollow Man, it was during kind of like a weird transitional time with that genre of movie, so where things were not exactly fleshed out as much as they could be, but they were like, the idea was there.
Yeah. But I always, sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't think he had any fault in that, but I like with every movie that I've seen of his, the direction, it's like I've never had a problem with that.
Yeah, I think it's a very, he's a director, I think, like, his films are very much him. You know, and I think that a lot of that is, like, the hyper real, you know, hyper sense of violence, hyper sexualized, like, kind of raw in their
like
approach.
Basic Instinct a little bit.
But at the same time, very glossy. And again, like, movies that I mean, Total Recall I think is an excellent film. Robocop I think is an excellent film. And these two, like, sort of, you know, you consider them like big popcorn Hollywood productions, but there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of intricacies going on. They're not just like shoot 'em up action movies. And I think that he has a way of really handling that, handling the balance between the two. Nothing ever comes off pretentious or too on the nose. I think it's just like a really nice blend. And I think Robocop is probably one of the best examples of this functions as just very tight, fast moving action film, but then we get this whole universe. And I also think that he does a really good job of taking the time to create the details of the universe within a universe. And
that's very true within Robocop.
And really with any movie. And that's the thing. It's like it's a basic movie making process of, like, you know, this world exists. But in science fiction films, this world has to exist on its own. And I think Robocop really does a great way. And I think part of that is the direction of, like, making these pop culture things that only exist in this world, like the commercials that happen or the news reports. I love it when movies do that, where they create the world within the world and everything exists, you know, and there's obviously things we can relate to. People are human, reactions are the same, emotions are the same, but it makes it more interesting to me. And I think those are the details that sometimes can get pushed aside in other, especially science fiction films, where it's just like they're just in space, and it could be space in any movie, you know.
You know, it just dawned on me that when I think about science fiction and like a world within a world, and especially with, like, involving media, I always think about They Live. And Robocop was before They Live, I believe.
Yeah.
I think it was like a year before.
1 year before, yeah.
That's something I just dawned on me right now, actually.
Yeah, and I think this one all the way down to the 6,000 SUX car that people are driving. I mean, even, you know, there's very specific things that go on that are only specific to the universe in which Robocop and the movie exists. It's a very basic thing that, like, thousands and thousands of movies do, but I think to do it well is few and far between. I think this one really, really, like, knocks it out of the park.
He definitely pays attention to the details in this one. I think as far as incorporating creating the world with not only media, which is, like, outside the realm of, like, the Robocop thing that we're talking about, but also going into the other characters in the movie that almost have maybe even equal screen time with Robocop, like helping to create this world and making you believe it, and also with Robocop 2 making it not as much of a futuristic world, but making it like to where it's unbelievable,
right?
But making you feel like this is Detroit. And we could even say, like, you know, 30 years later, yeah, it's kind of still Detroit, actually.
Yeah, I think it is very smart filmmaking, you know, and again, not letting a lot of details go to the wayside. But I wanted to, before we go to another clip, kind of talk a little bit about, so we mentioned these sort of undertones in the movie. This is very much an action film, no doubt about it. I think the action is strong, it's fierce, it's violent, and it is entertaining. But there are a lot of things that are at play here, and I think very ahead of its time for the 80s, you know, the play on, and a lot of things that are true nowadays, you know, like corporate takeover.
It's weird when you look at this movie now and you're like, It's kind of like what's happening right now.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's weird.
In that the government has put a corporation in charge of something, so there's this fear of the government, there's this fear of corporate takeover, a fear of a conglomerate. The media in this movie is very controlling. And everything is like all wrapped up together. And I think that's something that, again, they talk about. It's strange because we say dystopian future. Like these are the elements of like, well, this is this would be the terrible outcome if like corporations took over and everything, and then we turn to 2018 and you're like, watching this movie, you're like, whoa.
Wait, what's dystopia anymore?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Am I living in it? I don't know.
So it is in especially like just corporate scandals and government scandals and money, being money hungry and decisions that are made, everything perpetuated on, well, we were just trying to make a buck. It doesn't matter if things work or not. It's money is the main issue. And then this sort of facade that is put on top of that to like get the approval of society. And I think that's a lot of what goes on today. But at the time, these were like real fears, real things that people were thinking about, put into an action movie. And to me, it's very again, like this movie is like kind of prophetic and very smart. And when you watch it now, it's kind of mind blowing. Some of the issues that they're like talking about and the concerns that going on here.
And I think one of the biggest, my most ultimate fear is what we find out at the end when Robocop goes to confront like head honcho CEO dude that's in charge of everything, and he's unable to because he's been programmed to not go after that. So this is like the ultimate fear of what is there to protect and serve the public, which Robocop's been doing a great job of it.
Right.
He's been awesome, helping women in situations and helping breaking up bank or robberies. And then he gets to this point where it's like the ultimate evil and he can't. And it's because he's been programmed. And
because this person, the CEO of this corporation, is above the law.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that, is so prevalent in today's society where, if you're super rich, if you're super powerful, in a lot of ways, like, you live in your own separate universe. And I think this movie really tries to hit that home where these guys that are working for this corporation, the way they talk, it's like they talk like they're at war and they're cutthroat and
people are expendable.
They're expendable. I mean, people are like, if you're, well, if you're no good to us, it's like, well, too bad.
Moving on.
There's no. It's like emotionally cold, and I think there is a lot of satire in this. This isn't a movie. This movie gets credited as being like kind of funny. I've never really, and we both kind of talked about this.
Yeah.
I've not ever laughed at anything in this movie, but I've gotten the satire. The only scene to me that like reads funny is the.
What is it?
Is just the where they're getting ready to go into a room and he swipes his card and he's like, welcome to the club, and it's like now they're like VIPs and it's like, oh wow, what is this special room that they get to go into, and it's just like this private bathroom, private CEO head honcho bathroom that just looks like a regular bathroom. And I mean, I'm assuming that's meant to be funny, but
I would expect so, especially when we've got so much social commentary on that type of like person that we're talking about. The only part that I laughed at, which is way more like basic than that, was there's a scene where Robocop is having a altercation with another robot, right? And what's it?
Ed 209.
Ed 209, and Ed 209 can't figure out how to go down the stairs because his like paws aren't wired that way, or aren't like made that way to go downstairs. And then it turns into hilarity.
Don't they do like the sound of like a crying baby almost?
It's like a crying baby and like a weird, it's animal. I don't know. There's a lot of noises going on within that robot that are strange. But that's really the only scene that I found funny.
I do, and I guess I take it back. The other thing I do find funny is the whole like the obnoxiousness of I'll buy that for $1.
Yes. I think you know why I think that's not funny? I think it's just because like that exists, and like I know who those people are.
Right.
It's like the same in like I have a friend who's a dog groomer, and she does not think that Best in Show is funny at all.
Too close to home.
Yeah, she's just like, that's just reality.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe in some ways when I see things like that, or like welcome to the club, swiping my card.
Right.
It's like, yeah, that exists.
It does exist. Well, we're gonna go to another clip. I'm gonna go to a clip of the villain Clarence Boddicker. So we can. I really want to talk about
That guy's voice.
Yeah, he's
everything, really.
Everything about it. So we'll go to a clip with him just being his most villainous, and then we'll come back.
Why, you gotta be some kind of great cop. Come in here all by yourself. Where's your partner? Where's your partner?
Well, guys, the other one was upstairs. She was sweet. I took her out.
I bet that really pisses you off. You probably don't think I'm a very nice guy, do you?
Buddy, I think you're slime.
See, I got this problem. Cops don't like me, so I don't like cops.
So, like I said in the beginning, this portrayal, Kirkwood Smith being Clarence Boddicker.
And I think we should set the stage too, that if you're, unfamiliar with who he is or RoboCop, maybe you might know that 70s show. He's the dad in that 70s show.
Yeah, and the 70s show, though I was a fan.
Yeah, me too.
I couldn't shake the character that he portrayed in this movie. It's like I can't picture him as anything else. And I'm sure that is frustrating for an actor when they portray, but again, it's like, is it worth, it's probably worth it when you portray like this iconic character. I mean, I'm sure the same, there are other examples, Anthony Hopkins being Hannibal Lecter. It's like anytime you see someone portray such a strong villain, that it's hard to see them play a separate role. And Kirkwood Smith, I think, does, in my book anyway, he goes down in the top 10 best villains that I've seen on screen.
The thing about him is that he is the villain that's like a scrawny, little, nasally sounding, like just a jerk. And if you were to meet him in real life, you would be like, dude, get away from me. You were so gross. But like the way that he is very cutting, and he will just pop you sitting there at the bar, like he doesn't care. The way that he is portrayed is incredibly uncaring, and he just doesn't, he is not interested in what anyone else has to offer.
Yeah, and something so small and simple, but just giving him glasses.
Yeah, making him like quote unquote dorky. Like
right, and that he is, and he is a smart guy. He's a smart villain. He's like working the angles. He's like working a henchman for the corporation. He like knows about what's going on in the government. He knows about politics. He knows about the drug deals. I mean, he's plugged in, but he's like that nerd sitting behind the computer that's like knows everything and is like messing up everything. But then when it comes down to doing the vicious work, he's very, he has all his henchmen, but he's totally happy doing the dirty work himself. And
in fact likes it.
Yeah. And that's the kind of villain that is, to me, is,
incredibly scary.
Yeah, it's scary. It's like and again, someone that again is not physically I put Joe Pesci up there too, like in Goodfellas. The same with Kirkwood Smith. Not a very physically imposing guy, and if you looked at him, you physically
buzz off, dude.
You wouldn't feel scared, but like this persona, everything that he puts out, and I think every scene that he's in, it just enhances the movie, and I just think it's a great performance altogether. But again, like hard to see him in any other role, especially as a dad in that 70s show. But one of the things, so kind of coming out of just his portrayal, but the violence, we both kind of talked about this last week. We were prepping for the show, the death of Murphy, who goes on to become Robocop, which the whole Clarence's gang, really, it's a very torturous and horrible death. One that scarred me as a kid. This was, like I said, one of these movies. His death is so brutal to me. It was scarring. Like, and even when we were ramping up to this, watching it a couple of times, it's like, oh man, this.
I think I had blocked out actually that scene, because as soon as it started, and I hadn't seen this in a while. As soon as it started, I immediately remembered like Murphy's hand getting blown off, and was like, oh yeah, geez, okay, yeah, I totally remember where this is going right now. And it is just, I mean, it's a up close assassination, and it is unrelenting. It's not necessarily like torturing for hours. I mean, it's over fairly quickly, but it's not great.
Yeah, and this is the violence in this movie is very strong, and I know like just in our research we found that some of the reasoning for the violence is it making it so over the top that it becomes humorous, which I don't particularly find in that scene. So I dug a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And Paul Verhoeven says and it made more sense to me, because I feel like the scene's almost too brutal. And the reasoning he gave for the Murphy death scene being as brutal as it is that Peter Weller, who portrays Murphy, was only on screen for about maybe all of like 8 minutes or so before he gets killed, and then they transform him into Robocop. And Paul Verhoeven thought that wasn't enough screen time for the audience to really connect with him. I mean, we get the idea like this guy's got a wife, he's got a kid, but
new job.
Yeah, new job, but we don't really get enough time to get to know him and feel for him before he gets killed. So his thought process was, if we make his death so excruciatingly painful and like horrifying, the audience will be empathetic to feel sorry for him just in his death, and so they won't forget that. And so then when he becomes Robocop later on, like, just it's more of like them witnessing his execution is what will stay with them and give the character empathy. And now everything I heard up until that point, I was like, it's over the top, this is that. But that being the reasoning from a filmmaking standpoint, I think is an excellent point. And I think extremely effective. And for me personally, that does, it works on my emotion. Yeah, it works for me. Like, I feel so bad for him in that scene that, you're pulling for him after that. And then when he comes around and gets his vengeance, I feel, vindicated. Yeah, when
Robocop starts or having flashes or remembering, either whether it's his life before or his death, you are immediately put back into that position too. And because it is so emotionally, effective, you can't help but be right there with him. There was another aspect that I found out about this, and I mean, I don't know how much actually plays into like Paul Verhoeven's work. He did mention that the like ultra violence of Robocop maybe so he grew up in the Netherlands, and when the Germans invaded, that hauling bodies out of the streets like was kind of commonplace, and seeing the aftermath of gun violence and just violence in general became sadly like not normal, but just like expected. So his way of thinking, like making something like so violent and seeing the actual result of gun violence was just what he was used to. And I also would think that this would be something that when you're a toddler, like when you're a kid during this time, that like everything seems way more amped up than it is. I'm not discounting anything or not saying that it wasn't terrible, but I can see how that being so much more animated, like what we see in Robocop. Now, I think that idea, having that in your past and something that you're coming from, makes sense. But I think that what makes more sense to me from a movie making standpoint is kind of what you explained, that in order to care about these situations, and especially the death of Murphy, that this ultra violence is kind of important to the plot. And even when Kirkwood Smith dies at the end, I mean, I know that's not like a lot, but there's
via a
jab to the neck,
steel sharp blade to the jugular.
It was the second time through though that I noticed the spurting, and I was like, okay, the spurting is happening the whole time. That's a lot of blood. Yeah. But the thing is like, if you happen to hit a jugular,
yeah,
that's going to happen.
But for me, as violent as that scene, is, we needed him to not get off easy.
Oh yeah.
You needed to see him die in the same way that he put, Murphy's character through torture.
It's the same way, like when, like we talked about in our previous like Fatal Attraction podcast, like when Glenn Close is offed, like it is the ultimate moment, and it's by the woman that she's wronged. Like
yes.
Like you need that in order to feel like it is complete at the end.
The only scene that to me that is over the top violence, where a lot of people, I saw this at a midnight screening, I guess. Mm-hmm. It was probably like 5 years ago or something. And the scene where the chemical vat falls on the one character, and everybody's just like cutting up in the theater, like laughing and stuff. Yeah. That movie as a kid, and even to this day, when I was watching this last week, I don't think it's funny, man. It like creeps me out when he's like, "Help me!"
Yeah,
and he's just melting
away,
and then gets hit with a car and just sort of like liquefies.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's something about the melting of like faces and stuff that just like freaks me out.
No, he's totally got that Toxic Avenger like thing going on, except way worse.
Yeah. But man, when people were really cutting up in the theater, like laughing a lot of the scenes in this movie. So it certainly does play, the humor exists in the movie. It just, for me, and like same with you, I didn't get a lot of laughs out of the movie. But I will say this, was there's probably like 200 people there. Really a crowd pleaser.
Was?
Yeah. Like people were really getting into it. I mean, granted, most of the people had seen it, but
sure.
It's, sometimes movies just, it's interesting. And this too, I hate to bag on running times of movies so much, and I don't think I've done it. More in my real life, not so much on this podcast. I don't
think you've done it.
But this movie clocks in about, before credits, this movie's clocking in about 1:35. And there's a lot of commentary, a lot of action, a lot of character building. I feel like movies that aren't as developed as this one, multiple movies I've seen over the last 10 years are running like almost as long as The Godfather, and just I don't need it in my life.
No,
but that's why I go back to a movie like this. It's like, watch these movies. You can have as much character development in a 1 hour and 35-minute film. Study RoboCop. Sorry, that was my.
No, there's definitely something to be said. I've always kind of felt like if a movie goes over 2 hours, then they're there better be a good reason. Like, I'll give you 215 maybe if it's like something real involved. But generally,
Yeah, if we got to cover like 3 decades of somebody's life, I understand.
yeah.
230. If we're covering 4 days of someone's life, I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't need a 40-minute
Can't.
battle sequence. But that's neither here nor there. That's why we're not talking about those movies in this podcast. Well, was there anything else we wanted to? I feel like there was one other thing we were talking about here that we didn't get to. Though we should go on to our picks of the week.
It's I don't think we've given her a proper shout out, but like Nancy Allen's performance in this as Murphy's partner, just for like a day, and then she's the one that kind of like plants the nugget of, hey, you're Murphy. Hey, dude, come on. I know that you're a robot now, but I see the lower half of your face. I know that
it saves his life.
Yeah, she does. And she's like a great character as far as female cop, late 80s.
Yeah. I really enjoy Nancy Allen. I think she's someone that, is like really had like many, worked with a bunch of great directors early on. I'll talk a little bit more about her in my pick of the week. But yeah, I think she makes a great character, and she really hung in there with the sequels.
Yeah. Justin, why don't you tell me about your pick of the week?
Okay. Well, my pick of the week is 1983's Strange Invaders, which co-stars Nancy Allen. And this is this movie, I think it's pretty, I don't know, I would say it is kind of an obscure film, but definitely the most obscure one that I've used for a pick of the week. And this was a movie that came out and was very much a throwback to sci-fi films of the 50s and late 50s, early 60s, like your Forbidden Planets or your Ed Wood. Not as low budget as Ed Wood, but in that vein of sort of this tongue-in-cheek sci-fi. You have some sort of weird plot going on. You have like invaders from another planet. And I think that it wasn't something, now people do throwback stuff all the time. It's very common to do like vintage stuff and retro stuff. But I think for 1983, this was a very unique thing. I don't think very many people were into it or got the idea that they were paying tribute to these older films, because it is very camp. I mean, this is like totally, when I say campy, like a very campy film. And essentially it takes place, opens in the 50s and then quickly becomes present day, which is then 1983. And it's a husband whose ex-wife leaves to go to the town that she grew up in, but she disappears. So he goes to the town, and when he's there, everything in this town, in the Centralville, Illinois town, which I like it because it takes place in the Midwest. We're bordering Illinois, and not many movies take place in Illinois, especially like some small town in Illinois. But anyway, he gets there, and everything in the town is exactly as it was from the 50s. And then he witnesses an alien ripping its skin off its face, like they're dressed like humans. And the effects in this, though cheap, are still pretty terrifying. And then an alien tries to blow his car up. So he goes back to the big city and doesn't really know what to do. He's witnessed this craziness. So he finds a report about an alien encounter from this journalist who is portrayed by Nancy Allen. And she works for like a magazine that's sort of like the Inquirer. And so she's like, yeah, it was totally fake. It wasn't like a real thing. But for whatever reason, she joins him on his journey to figure out what's going on, to unravel this plot. It gets a little convoluted at this point, but somehow these aliens have been like, took over this town and have been waiting to go back home. So we're kind of, has like an ET vibe going on. But they eventually go back to the town and try to save some people, but the aliens do this thing where they vaporize people, and by touching them, and they turn them into these orbs. But when they do it, again, and this is why it kind of like another connection to Robocop, the alien touches his kid's feet, and his feet start melting, and the kid is screaming and is terrifying. His whole body starts melting, and his face like melts, and then he like turns into this little orb that the alien creates. And then there's a scene where the aliens are walking, and they're just like tearing off their like fake human flesh and revealing themselves as like these like creepy looking alien bodies. Again, it's not the greatest film, but it is one of those movies. I think it's like the perfect, if you've had a couple beers on a Saturday night, or if it's Sunday afternoon, the middle of the summer like it is now, you're like just looking for something to just like throw on in the background. I think this is perfect for that. And though Nancy Allen doesn't have a very big role, again, I think this is for me, it's interesting, this movie being in her career, because she really, her career is interesting to me because she started out, I mean, doing 4 movies for Brian De Palma, who was his early work I'm a huge fan of, then doing a movie for Steven Spielberg, and then doing this very small, kind of strangely low budget homage to like 60s sci-fi movies, and then going on to do Robocop and other movies. But yeah, again, it's just one of those movies. I think, again, it's not great, but I thoroughly enjoy it. If you're into sort of campy throwback stuff, it's definitely will be up your alley. It's one of those movies you look up on IMDb, and it's got some like really horrible audience reviews that totally, like, I think like miss the point that this is supposed to be like a throwback film. They're just like, what is this cheap garbage? But there's a lot there, and it's, even though it's like really cheap and low budget, I think I like the way the effects are. To me, there's a couple moments where I'm still like, oh man, that is just a child's feet and legs melting like while he's screaming, terrifying.
And especially with the effects of 1983, I bet that it was like super gross.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
Super gross and very real.
Something about people melting. I don't know what it is. I think it's because like maybe it like takes me back to like Raiders of the Lost Ark with the guy's face melting.
Gross.
Just ever since that, just, you know, I just hope that like however I go out in my life, you know, it's not like what happened to him. Yeah, he like melted.
That's pretty gross.
Yeah. So your pick of the week was...
Sorry about that. Excuse me. My pick of the week is Runaway.
Runaway.
Yeah. Have you seen this?
So I actually have seen it, but
Okay.
it has been a while. And again, I say this every single time. You just happen to like always pick these movies that like...
Like, oh yeah,
like,
that one. That one again.
I like, kind of remember it, and it's like, it's probably awesome. And then actually there's not a movie that you've like brought up as a pick of the week that I've rewatched and like not liked.
Oh.
So Runaway.
Yes.
I do remember this is Tom Selleck and Kirstie Alley.
Yes.
Okay.
Kirstie Alley's kind of in a supporting role.
Okay.
It's actually more of like the main character is Cynthia Rhodes, who you might remember from Flashdance and Dirty Dancing, is like the best dancer in both of those.
Okay.
If you know those movies.
I do know those movies.
Okay. So Runaway, it's kind of staying with the whole futuristic world of sci-fi technology and robots by way of Michael Crichton, who actually wrote and directed this. I forgot if I mentioned this was 1984 too. So he had already had a established career at this point. But it was, you know, in the early, in 2018, it was definitely in the earlier part. So it follows Tom Selleck, who, if you don't know who Tom Selleck is, he's Magnum PI. You should just Google him. You probably know who he is anyway. And like I said, Cynthia Rhodes. Together, they track down malfunctioning or dangerous robots and disarm them. The villain in this one is none other than, get ready for it, Gene Simmons, most notably from the legendary band Kiss, who plays a demented scientist looking to capitalize on malicious robot technology. It sounds like something he would do, honestly. Unlike a lot of movies, or like what a lot of movies were striving for at the time, this one has very few special effects, and the robots that we meet are mainly invented to assist humans at home or at work, or like as personal devices. Except for the gaggle of evil spider-looking creatures that Simmons' character creates, but you get your fill of that throughout the whole movie. So this one's not for everyone. There's no scary godlike government. It's not a grimy, slick look at the future. It actually seems like kind of like the present everyday life, just with lots of smart technology and non-human-like robots. But that kind of actually sounds like 2018 now that I think about it. It relies mostly on the story, which is very compelling, and that you care about Selleck tracking down Simmons, who is a criminal he's had a bad history with. We don't know what it is, but we just know he's had a history with him. This was Simmons' first film role, and he really does a great job at this vicious antagonist, and also has the best facial expressions. Maybe not as good as, like, I'll say it again. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Predator, previous podcast, had some great faces. It's the eyes. It's all in the eyes, I'm telling you.
You're all about the eyes.
I guess so. Gene Simmons, excellent on the eyes. So Tom Selleck does what he does best. He plays a strong, sensitive, charming, like dad-like dude. And maybe it's my mom that influenced me, but Tom Selleck will always be a winner in my book. The very vivacious and sassy, as we already mentioned, Kirstie has a supporting role as Simmons' ex-girlfriend, as well as little Joey Kramer, who plays Selleck's kid, and who some of you might remember from the movie Flight of the Navigator. This movie had a lot going on for it at the time, like big name actors. Crichton was a huge success, writer, storyteller, director, an extremely accomplished music coordinator, Jerry Goldsmith, who had worked on a ton of movies and still does. Did an all-electric soundtrack for this one. But when it was released, it was at the same time as Terminator, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and 2010, the sequel to 2001, A Space Odyssey. And many people felt like it was overshadowed and forgotten, and it wasn't exactly like the most well-received movie either. Or critically acclaimed, I should say. Half the movies I like are not critically acclaimed, though. So while it might not have a deep meaning, and its main female lead may have a, maybe a tad problematic, not offensive, just a little problematic, but it's still a like really engaging and convincing chase-type thriller movie. I'll always watch Runaway when it's on TV, and if you can believe it, Justin, I have it on VHS and DVD, and probably a taped from HBO version from my mom. Good God.
I can 100% believe that.
Yeah, I'm sick. Tom Selleck did call this movie like a great popcorn movie, and that's exactly it. It's just entertaining, exciting, and like even kind of cute at times. It'll definitely keep you hooked until the very end, and I have to say it's a pretty solidly exhilarating ending. It's pretty good, complete with sparks in the air and everything.
I should have had you bring it with you.
Man, I know.
I don't own it.
I'll bring it next week.
Okay.
I will.
I think the only thing I remember the trailer for this, because I remember seeing the creepy spot, because spiders creep me out, and then like robot spiders, just if you can imagine. And Tom Selleck, it's interesting, like he's always been kind of like that guy that he was like a guy that my grandma was always like, oh, he's so handsome. And
I think everybody's grandma felt that way.
Yeah, and just like with the mustache.
Yeah. My dad has that mustache.
I've never been able to grow a mustache, so it's always been something that.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got if you let that go for a little bit, it would turn into a mustache. It doesn't.
I haven't shaved in weeks.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah. And mine doesn't really come out like a mustache. It's like something that you would comb with like a mouse brush. Like a brush you would use to comb a mouse. You'd like.
So you're saying I probably have more of a mustache than you.
I'm saying a 14-year-old pubescent boy has more of a mustache than me. But so that was something that, like, when I see Tom Selleck, you know, there's part of me that is just.
Yeah, that's a full stash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, not to make this whole podcast about my facial hair.
I bet that there is a whole podcast about facial hair, and I bet Tom Selleck comes up.
Yeah. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna. Yeah, if you can bring it next time, I like.
Yeah, I can. I can definitely do that.
Make a note. So, 2 movies to check out if you like: Strange Invaders, Runaway. Mm-hmm. Both sci-fi movies.
Maybe a year apart. I don't know if that matters, but it's interesting.
Yeah, both good. You know, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon movies.
Yeah,
very afternoon-ish movies.
Kicking back on a Sunday afternoon when you don't have anything to do.
Yeah. Good pick.
You too. I really want to watch that.
I'm just happy that I finally picked something that you're good.
That's not true. I'm still on the fact that I haven't been able to rewatch Foxes.
Okay. Well.
It's bothering me still. Okay. And that was many podcasts ago.
Yeah. It still bothers me as well.
Yeah, I bet.
So now we're almost done here, but this is my favorite part of the podcast. And hopefully one of yours as well. This is your Murray moment.
Chicks dig me because I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something unusual.
I think I need a root canal. I'm sure I need a long, slow root canal.
You're gonna come and shake my monkey tree again?
Oh, what does that old queen know? She didn't even show.
Hey, this is so scrumptious. Is this hand shucked?
The flowing robes, the grace, all striking.
That was fun.
All right, so if you know of Bill Murray's SNL career, you've most likely heard of Nick the Lounge Singer, a character that he came up with while at Second City and based off of real-life Chicago lounge singer Jimmy Damon. If you don't know about this character, he's exactly what you would think. A smarmy, cheesy, mediocre, like not the most amazing singer of songs you'd really never expect or even maybe want to hear. Now, Billy's love for music has always been a constant in his life. From his early days when he fronted a band, I think that they were called the Dutch Masters from what I can suss out, to Second City, SNL, karaokeing while lost in translation, or a real-life college house party, a Netflix Christmas musical of sorts, and most recently collaborating with a classically trained trio of musicians for an artistically hybrid mix of singing, spoken word, poetry or excerpts, all along with musical accompaniment. Now, until recently, he's been known for more of this lounge singer act than actually singing as himself. Nothing has ever been safe from our Billy. He could do Stairway to Heaven, House of the Rising Sun, Gloria, a Christmas song, any Christmas song. The randomness of him is just one of his many lovable traits. Now, one song in particular, a hit by the band Looking Glass, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, keeps making its way into his rotation. You might remember this song. Go ahead and Google it really quickly if you don't, because you probably know it. Billy has always said that this song, he really likes to butcher this one specifically. I would never say that he butchers it. I mean, it's Bill Murray. It's impassioned. It's not butchered. He once performed it with Clint Eastwood, though Eastwood was lagging behind on the backup vocals. It wasn't that impressive. Once in 2015 at a Caddyshack golf tournament with his brother Joel, and onlookers at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival were certainly not expecting to get to know that fine girl Brandy by way of Billy. But the most random, perhaps, was on the set of the movie Quick Change, also starring Kirkwood Smith, the villain from Robocop and the dad from That 70s Show. We've already hit on this, and there's your connection. Smith said that the climactic scene in Quick Change, wherein all the main characters and a ton of extras are jam-packed on this plane, all in the cabin, Billy checks to make sure that they're all set to go. Now, Billy co-directed and co-wrote this movie, so he was in the director's chair at this point, and he was checking to make sure everybody's ready to go. He's like, okay, we good? Camera, sound, everybody? And then he bursts out singing Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. All verses, the entire song, it's every single word. And then, after he made everybody listen to that, he called action. Smith said that it had nothing to do with anything that was going on in the movie, that he could tell that people got a pretty big kick out of it. I'm sure some people were annoyed, especially the money people. And then filming resumed. But do some internet researching, and you should be able to find more than one of these instances, though probably not the Quick Change example. And hey, if you find more than what I mentioned, definitely drop us an email, because now I'm on a quest to find every Bill Murray version of Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. Do we all know that song, Justin? Do you want to hum us a few bars?
I don't know that I know it that well.
What? Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be. Such a fine wife. No?
I just wanted to hear you sing it.
Damn it. Of course. Well, hey, Bill, you want to come sing Brandy, You're a Fine Girl on Don't Push Pause? Please get over here. Oh, man. Seriously, go look up those YouTube clips, because that man, every single time.
Can you do that one more time?
I mean, you really want me to?
I seriously do.
I wish you could loop Bill Murray singing with me.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a way I can figure it out.
You could probably.
Just in case I can't, though. Just a
in
little
case
bit.
You can't.
Just that backup. I cut you off before you got to
Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be. Such a fine wife. My love, and my lady. Do, 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 do. Something like that.
See, I didn't know that you sang. I knew that you played drums.
I can't sing, Justin. I think I'm definitely the Joel Murray in this situation. All right.
That was a good Murray moment. I enjoy all of these. I know I'm
good. I know it was a lot of build up to get to that.
I know you think a lot of times I'm just complimenting you because I need you to write this stuff for the podcast, and that's not the case. I really do enjoy everything that you do.
Good. I'm glad you do.
It's just not a motivational thing to get you to work. These were good. Just keep on writing them, Lindsay.
Keep on doing it. You can do it. I trust
11
you.
episodes in, and you've like continuously like brought something new, and you know.
Man, it doesn't mean that I don't freak out a little bit every time.
I can understand.
Or like think of how to craft something to where it'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for that Murray moment.
Of course.
Next episode coming up.
We're stoked.
Pretty exciting. We're doing one of our favorites, The Monster Squad.
Finally.
And also exciting because we're going to get the opportunity to interview our first interview for the podcast. We're going to be interviewing the star of Monster Squad, Andre Gower, and his producing partner, Henry McComas, who together they put out a feature-length documentary about the Monster Squad called Wolfman's Got Nards. It's playing in film festivals right now, so we'll be interviewing them, and we'll play the interview a week after we put out the Monster Squad episode.
So if you don't know much about the Monster Squad or need to brush up on it, we'll get you there, and then you can listen to this awesome interview.
You'll become very familiar with the Monster Squad after these 2 episodes. Again, as always, if you've been listening, if you're joining us for the first time or you've been listening to these episodes, we can't thank you enough. You're the reason why. You're the motivation to keep us continuing on. I mean, this is something that we truly enjoy, but we've gotten a lot of good feedback. We've gotten a lot of good comments. We've gotten a few requests for movies and couple of comments of people saying, "Oh man, I totally forgot about that movie."
Yeah.
And those are the, I know a lot of movies that we talk about are ones that everybody's seen, but yeah, it's the encouragement and the positivity we hope that we're bringing to people, to you, the listener. So thank you for your support.
It means
and
everything.
Your comments. Yeah, it really, because we're just doing this out of.
Yeah, we love doing it, but it's really helpful if if you're enjoying it, and it's we're not just the kid from Wet Hot American Summer talking to himself, know. No, we really love doing this, and I think we both genuinely hope that when we talk about these things that it makes you want to watch these movies.
Yeah. And again, this has been a real learning curve for us. This has been a learning process, and with each episode, I think we gain a little bit more knowledge and understanding of trying to figure out what we're doing here.
That's the truth.
But we hope you're hanging in there. Again, always feel free to contact us at don'tpushpause@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Don't Push Pause Podcast, on Facebook, Don't Push Pause Podcast, or our very humble website, don'tpushpausepodcast.com. We're constantly evolving. Your feedback is always appreciated. Thank you so much for the support and listening. Can't thank you enough.
Yes.
So that ends another podcast. I'm Justin Johnson.
And I'm Lindsay Reaper.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.